Stories of Faith and Doubt. Welcome to the Veritas Forum at University of Helsinki. A special welcome for today's presenters, Professor Henry Bacon from University of Helsinki and Professor Emeritus Jean Veith from Concordia University, Wisconsin. Before we start, let me say a few words about the organizer of the forum. Veritas Forums are university events which engage students and faculty in discussions about life's biggest questions. The first Veritas Forum took place at Harvard in 1992. Now, over 200 universities across North America, Europe, and Asia are hosting annual forums. As a Christian agent, we make sure to present a Christian view at every forum, along with a wide range of other worldviews. Our previous forum titles have been, for example, Are Human Rights for All and The Problem of Pain. We aim to create events that are relevant and engaging to people of all backgrounds and beliefs. We need your help with this. Please take a minute to fill out your survey card before you leave. If you have time, please join us afterwards for a cup of coffee. My name is Danielle Miettinen, and I am the National Coordinator of Veritas Forum Finland. And now, I would like to invite our moderator, Chief Information Specialist Matti Myllykoski from Helsinki University Library to host today's discussion. The Stories of Faith and Doubt. Matti Myllykoski, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Without much further ado, I would like to welcome Jean Edward Veith Jr., who is a writer and a retired literature professor, born in Oklahoma back in 1951. He's made a remarkable career, working as a teacher and a professor in several institutions, particularly in Concordia Theological Seminary in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and he's been a visiting lecturer at the Estonian Institute of Humanities in Tallinn, so he has links to this part of Europe as well, and he's an author of 20 books, including topics like postmodern times, spirituality of the cross, part of the history of the evangelical movement, classical education, and writings about Christian vocation. So now he lives with his wife in Blackwell, Oklahoma. Is that right? So let's give a hand to Jean Edward.
So thank you. It's really good to be here. I'm enjoying being in Finland. I was just passing through the different times I've been in Estonia. It's nice to spend some time here. In thinking about the topic of this forum, stories of doubt and stories of faith, I was trying to think what would be some good stories to discuss, and I was thinking, Dostoevsky, but is he a story of doubt or a story of faith? What would be a good film about faith? I was thinking of Bergman's Seventh Seal. I mean, is that a story of doubt or a story of faith? And I realized that in many, if not most, cases, stories of doubt and stories of faith are the same stories very often. Doubt is not unbelief. There are stories of unbelief. Philip Pullman's his Dark Materials story. But there's no doubt in Pullman's fantasy about atheism. He's very certain about not believing. There's no struggle in it. But doubt is a struggle. But also stories of faith are also about struggle, and that's very often the very same struggle. Now, what do we mean by faith? Well, theologically, faith is a response to grace. Response to grace. In classical Christian terms, a person learns about God's grace in Christ, the forgiveness, the unmerited love, and the response is that of what we call faith. But how do you get this faith? Well, again, according to traditional Christian spirituality, it's an experience that goes from law to gospel, where a person is first broken by the law. In other words, who comes to the point of giving up on himself. And it's a time of struggle. It's a time of giving up on trying to always justify oneself. To always say, I am a good person, I am good, but then realizing that I'm not that way. And coming to the point very often of despair, whereupon when the person is crushed by the law, to use traditional Christian language, then here's that message of grace, that a message of acceptance, a sense of being loved despite all of the transgressions. Hear the message of Christ and of redemption, and that's faith. Now, in stories, in literature about faith, you tend to see that same pattern at work. In Dostoevsky, I don't know if you read the Brothers Karamazov, for example, I've heard of some people who give up their faith because of that scene of the Grand Inquisitor. In that it's a fantasy within the story of one of the characters telling this parable about Jesus being summoned before the Spanish Inquisition. And the Inquisitor is confronting Jesus, and in the course of it, he says why we have to crucify you. We have to crucify you because you hold up an impossible ideal. You're tormenting the human race. We can never be as good as you. And you create false hopes, and we have to crucify you so that we who understand human beings and how limited and wretched they are, so that we can truly help people. Anyway, it's a powerful scene, and the Grand Inquisitor ends up just ranting against Jesus, why he must be crucified for the sake of humanity. And some people who read that, that's very powerful, and this is why we must reject the Christian faith, and so on. But in that scene, it ends with an act of grace. Jesus says nothing in answer to the Grand Inquisitor. At the end, right before he's sent off to be crucified, Jesus kisses him. It's an expression of grace, of love, despite the opposition of the Inquisitor. Now, that moment of grace, what do we do with it? Well, again, I people who I think miss that moment, who listen to the Inquisitor and take what he says as true. They miss this moment of grace. And so other people reading that same scene are convicted of the grace of Christ. And that story becomes a story of doubt for some, but it becomes a story of faith. And that's certainly how Dostoevsky intended it. In all Dostoevsky's work, Crime and Punishment, he's dealing with struggles, with human and psychological struggles of almost unparalleled degree. Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov, who commits a murder, almost as a philosophical experiment. Sort of Nietzschean Superman. I am superior to everyone. I am superior to the moral law. I am superior to this woman who cleans my house. And so, out of no real motive, almost as a philosophical act, he murders her. And yet, despite his beliefs, despite his convictions, that there's nothing wrong with doing this because there are no moral absolutes and I am superior anyway. In the course of the story, he descends into guilt. A guilt that he can't really even account for. Into guilt, self-loathing, despair. In the meantime, the law is after him. As a detective is tracking down the killer. In the course of it, he meets a prostitute named Sonia. And Sonia, too, has lived a very difficult, tragic, guilt-ridden life. But she's found Christianity. She speaks to him of Christ. And again, Raskolnikov is struggling with that and rejecting it. And yet he finds himself loved by Sonia, even though he knows he doesn't deserve her love. Well, in the course of the novel, he's condemned. He's arrested. He's sent off to prison colony. And Sonia comes with him. And at the very end of the novel, we see Raskolnikov to accept that redemption that she speaks of. Again, it's a story of doubt, his philosophical rejection, and yet it turns into a story of faith. And when you look at other religious stories, Flannery O'Connor, great American writer, and Marilyn Robinson, and many others, you see these two streams in a novel about faith. Again, the struggle with oneself leading to giving up. And then the moment of grace that leads to some kind of redemption. We were asked to talk about works that have influenced us. I'll just mention a couple quickly. Story of faith or story of doubt. One important one for me was when I was a young person in secondary school. I read Lord of the Rings, Tolkien's novel. Again, it has no religious content in many ways. What it did, though, was awaken in me a sense of yearning, a sense of wonder, and a sense of mystery. Later, from reading the blurb on the back of The Lord of the Rings in that American edition, there's a line that says, somebody said about it, here are beauties which pierce like swords or burn like cold iron. I thought, right, that's how I feel about that. That's how this fantasy made me feel. And it's kind of my first exposure to literary criticism, I suppose, which later I became my field. It was said by somebody named C.S. Lewis. I was in a bookstore browsing around, and I saw a book by that name, C.S. Lewis, and I remember that he was the one who expressed so beautifully what the effect of J.R. Tolkien's work was on me. So I picked it up, and I saw it was dedicated to J.R. Tolkien. And it was the Screwtape Letters. And so I started reading C.S. Lewis, and that was my first introduction really to Christianity, because I grew up in a very kind of liberal, secular kind of home. And I've never heard Christianity taken with such seriousness before, or even knowing what Christians believed. And so reading C.S. Lewis, I learned about the notion that God became a human being, that God became flesh, and somehow took into himself the evils and the sufferings of the world and redeemed them. So that was really the beginning of my life as a Christian. But more recently, though, an overwhelming literary experience I had was reading Victor Hugo, Les Miserables. I saw the movie. Enjoyed the movie for all of its faults and sentimentality and bad singing. I thought, I haven't read that novel, very important 19th century novel, and so I started reading Victor Hugo. Now, these 19th century novels by people like Hugo are what we describe as immersive. You just you're just immersed in the imagination of the author, in these imaginary worlds. Scenes that took maybe 2 minutes in the movie are described in 18 chapters in Victor Hugo. And so I was just like swimming in this ocean of Victor Hugo. But I had become somewhat harsh in my beliefs, in my treatment of other people. I'd become kind of judgmental and legalistic. What I was finding in Victor Hugo, though, is this sense of compassion, which hadn't been a big part of my spiritual life before. You maybe have seen the movie or read the book. There's that moment that's about Jean Valjean, who's unjustly arrested for stealing a loaf of bread, and he's in the galley. And he gets out. And he's a thief and a criminal, and he goes to a bishop who receives him kindly, helps him, but then he steals from that bishop, steals the silver candlesticks, and he's arrested, and the bishop, the police brings him back for the bishop to identify him, and the bishop says, "Oh, no, I gave him these candlesticks. But in fact, you didn't take them all," and he gives him the rest of his silver. And it's an act of such grace that Jean Valjean is stunned. And despite what he deserved, he's getting this kind treatment. And it's a moment of grace, and it's a kind of conversion for Jean Valjean. But then throughout the whole book, Hugo plunges into the worst kinds of injustice, of problems in 19th century France, and all of the motives for the revolution, and all the cruelties, and all the suffering. And throughout, Jean Valjean is bringing grace in those situations. And the effect of it, for me, it was kind of overwhelming. and I finished that book, and I think it made me a more compassionate person. And some of our imaginative experiences make us less human, some make us more human, some make us less sensitive, some make us more sensitive. And Victor Hugo's novel, even though it wasn't a preaching kind of book, was a great story of faith for me. So, thank you. I'll turn you over to Professor Veith.
Henry Bacon is born in...
Henry Bacon is born in Helsinki on 4th December 1957.
A long story.
Birthday this year, doesn't it?
Yeah.
All right. And you've been doing a wide range of studies, musicology, theater studies, and so on. You ended up with film and television studies, and then you are also an author of an opera, I've seen. And you have some, over 20 years career in research, and you've been professor of film and television studies here in Helsinki, starting 1st August 2004. Major topics: violence in film, Lucchino Visconti, history of opera, films and cultural interpretation of films, etc., etc. Let us give a hand to Henry on his talk.
Okay, you failed to mention one thing, which is that from high school I actually went to study technology at the Tampere University of Technology. And even in this lecture there will be one scientific formula. Because one of my whole points is that how does my understanding of the natural sciences combine with my understanding of spirituality? Some of the films that have been extremely relevant for me in this respect, you see there, Bresson's Diary of a County Priest. Many of these connect well with what Jean was just saying, like the very last line of the Diary of the County Priest is, all is but grace. Okay. And then, of course, pickpocket, I recently wrote an article about that. You might actually later on, depending on how our discussion continues, then see the final scene of that. Because although in this film there's no explicit reference to religion, many people have found this to be an extremely religious film. And this is something I explore in my article. And that is one of the mysteries here, that why is this paradox possible? Or Ingrid Bergman, The Seventh Seal, and in a moment I'll show you a clip from Winter Light, which is extremely relevant to the line of thought that I'm going to present. I won't go through all these. I'm sure you know at least some of them. Perhaps I could just mention Kieslowski's Decalogue, but even more his film Blue from the Three Colors trilogy. A bit the same as in Pickpocket, although it's not explicitly about religion, it is about faith. And very much about the struggle between faith and doubt. Antonia Bird's film Priest, again something that Jean just said, one crucial scene in this film, the priest, who's the main character in the film, has a terrible crisis. In confession he has heard something terrible about exploitation of a young girl. And he doesn't know what to do about this because his religion forbids him to make this public. And there's a scene where he then prays Christ. He goes down on his knees and says that it's easy for you, you can go on the cross and come down, but I'm just a tuppence halfpenny priest. I can't do that. Yet the very act of him going into prayer actually launches a sequence of events which will launch into the crisis being solved. And just one last one, a recent film by Fontaine, The Innocents. It's a story set at the very end of the Second World War. A group of French people on the Red Cross are helping in Poland, and there's these nuns in this nunnery. I won't go into the plot of that, but there's one key line in this film. A nun tells this French nurse about her faith, and she says it's about 24 hours of doubt for 1 minute of hope. Okay, but now I'll show you a clip from this film, Bergman's Winterlight, Talven valoa. Where do I have it? Not that yesterday. Unfortunately, my copy, I didn't have a copy with English subtitles, so I will have to read or translate the text as we go. So the main character in this film is a priest, and he's going through a religious crisis, but also very personal crisis. You can kind of think that his main problem is that he's really unable to relate to other people. And at the very end of the film, he's going to perform the service, and he has a short conversation, or rather, one of the assistants in the church comes to talk to him, and this is what he says. I think there's a mistake when we talk about Christ's passion. What is that? We talk too much about the torture, although that can't have been so terrible. This may sound pompous, but even my own bodily torment must have been about the same as that of Christ. I mean, it was only short for him, about 4 hours. I think behind the corporal pain, there must have been a more spiritual agony. I may be wrong, but think of Gethsemane. The disciples have fallen asleep. They haven't understood anything about the Last Supper or anything else. The bailiffs come, they run in, and Peter denies him. For 3 years, Christ has been talking to them and living with them. They haven't understood what he was saying. They left him alone, completely alone. Pastor, there must have been a horrible pain to understand that no one understands. That one is forsaken when one needs support. What a pain. But even that wasn't the worst thing. When Christ was crucified, he cried, "O God, my God, why did you forsake me?" He shouted as loud as he could. He thought his Father in heaven had forsaken him, and that everything had been a lie. Christ had such some feeling of doubt just before his death. Pastor, that must have been the worst agony. God's silence. Indeed. So, this is a theme which reappears in Bergman's works several times, the idea of God's silence. And now I'll continue, and this is, in a way, all the time at the background, what I'm talking about. What I call the intertwining of faith and doubt. The burdensome, even the agonizing, but nevertheless healthy complementarity of faith and doubt. A bit like Jean was, I think, saying, a bit in a similar vein, that these are all the time intertwined with one another. And it can be a burden, it can be agonizing, but nevertheless, I believe it is healthy. So, and we have this desire for unquestionable truths. That's a part of our cognitive makeup. We want to believe that what we know about the world is true. The world is like that. Even more so about spiritual issues. They are so crucial for us that we want to believe that they are more or less absolutely true. Nevertheless, we are, and we should be even more, aware of the limits, not only of our knowledge and our cognitive capacities, but of the limited scope of all representation. Representation is always just some kind of an image, a model of the real world, or whatever we want to try to understand. And I think that must be true also even what in biblical talk is referred to as revelation. And I would claim that both faith and doubt can be symptoms of either arrogance or humility, blind fundamentalism or sterile skepticism. Both of them can be either of these two. Now, I find stories to be a profound way of exploring the dangers of both faith and the agonies of doubt. As a scholar, I am really a professional doubter. I mean, it's one of the basic requirements of being a scholar that you are able always to question even your most dear ideas about things are. It means that we are always uncertain, but that's in a way the price we have to pay so that we can do our job. But nevertheless, we have that passion for the real. And also we are trying to understand what is this reality about. And for some of them, physicalities, it's just about they would like to reduce everything to physics or biology or the neural circuits. But to me, it's also a question about the spiritual reality in which we live, which to me is as real as the physical. Okay, just a few ideas about the notion of truth in science. Science, in a sense, does not really need a notion of truth. Why? Because what science does is to produce models, which to varying degrees enhance our understanding of phenomena, and thus make the material world more amenable. So you don't have to ask, is the scientific formula true? Is it applicable? Does it help us to understand the phenomena we perceive? The criteria are thus how well it explains the observations we are able to make, how it connects with previous models, they might have to be adjusted, how can it be corroborated by experiments, does it further systematize knowledge, does it predict future observations? And all this connects. Okay, and now we come to that formula. The famous formula by Newton, his sort of second axiom. This is not the very formula he put it in. This is actually the popular version of it. But what is interesting here is that, okay, it works very well. But what exactly is its ontological status? Now, the people we called scientists at this time would call themselves natural philosophers. There's one natural philosopher who was very unhappy about this notion. F equals ma means force equals mass times acceleration. But this one natural philosopher claimed action at a distance, what force seems to imply, is so great an absurdity that I believe no man who in philosophical matters and a complete faculty of thinking can ever fall into it. It is inconceivable that inanimate brute matter should, without the mediation of something else which is not material, operate upon and affect other matter without mutual contact. Who said this? It was Mr. Newton himself. And what I love in this, that this man had actual doubts in this great formula which has been the basics of mechanics for 400 years. And he was really wondering, what does this mean, this equation? It was very far from obvious to him, and perhaps he never quite made his peace with it. And one contemporary scholar or philosopher of science, Ernst Nagel, writes, on this so-called instrumentalist view, the pertinent question about theories is not whether they are true or false, but whether they are effective techniques for representing and inferring experimental phenomena. And even more radically, he writes, many scientists as well as philosophers have indeed used the term real in an honorific way to express a value judgment and to attribute a superior status to the things asserted to be real. And he comes to the conclusion, it would be desirable to ban the use of the word altogether. So that's just how difficult it is actually to come into any kind of consensus what is real. Even the physicist can't do that. A very important notion in my thinking is modeling. So we have here an example of scientific modeling. So it's capturing in some form of representation the features of an object that are relevant in respect of our research interest. And a model may be a physical object, a diagram, verbal description, mathematical formula, or a story. And here I refer to my perhaps favorite philosopher, the French man Paul Ricoeur, who has pointed out that mimesis, from Aristotle's Poetics, he thinks the way it has been normally translated as imitation is wrong. And that the real word, the most useful word, would be modeling. So a story is a way of modeling human behavior, human values, human motivations, why people act the way they do, and what are the consequences of that action in the material world, in the psychological sphere, or in the sphere of the spirit. Now, with any kind of modeling, the problem is that it's difficult to gain a certainty as to whatever the model actually captures, whether the model actually captures all the interesting or even the important features of the object of description. Nevertheless, I would argue that modeling, whether in sphere of science or religion or just everyday life, is as good as it gets. But luckily, often that is enough. Just to introduce one field where the notion of truth really is needed, and that is the distribution of justice. I mean, you can only do that in a coherent way if you have some kind of faith that there is or has been a real state of affairs, and it is the duty of the court of law to discover what actually happened. It might then come to a question of guilt or innocence, or who has to pay, and so on. And very often these get very convoluted, and the question is rather arbitrary. It's a question of interpretation. Of course, if it's a question of whether someone actually killed someone, then we think that there is only one true state of affairs, and we have to discover that. But sometimes it's not all that easy. And in English parlance, there is the blurry notion of beyond reasonable doubt. I think that's a very bold expression. But one can understand that people making court decisions might have a need for that. So, then getting into the question of faith and doubt in religion. As a young person, about teenagers, I already started reading a bit of theology, and I thought this expression, per tertullian, credo quia absurdum est. It's been ascribed to Tertullian, but it's not quite clear. Roughly it means, I believe because it is absurd. In a way, you have faith against your own reasonable judgment. And in a way that becomes as a measure of your faith. And can you maintain that, even you actually cannot support it with rational arguments? And another philosopher who I rehearsed for this presentation is Søren Kierkegaard. And in his Fear and Trembling, he writes about dexterity in doubting. And he writes about the Greek philosophers who would use almost their lifetime to learn this dexterity, because it cannot be acquired in a few days or weeks. It is a task for a whole lifetime. And one might ask, does the same apply to faith? And then to quote my disputant here, in his article by Brittle Crazy Class, George Herbert, Vocation and the Theology of Presence. He writes, furthermore, says Herbert, every gift or ability is a talent to be accounted for and to be improved to our master's advantage. What a particular human being is able to do is a gift from God. He creates each individual with particular abilities, personality, interests and opportunities, all of which lead to God's various callings. Developing that idea, and we might have a debate about this, I would argue that we might have been given the gift of both faith and doubt, and that it should be our vocation to cultivate that gift in whatever proportion it has been given to us. And doing only one of them will lead to that fundamentalism or skepticism. And I conclude this part by 2 or 3 rather lengthy quotations, but they just crystallize so well what I've been thinking. God found these, I think, in my 30s or something. Erich Heller writes that one way of speaking of the revolution I have in mind, what happened in Western cultural history, of course, is to say that it reduced the stature of the symbol to the merely symbolic. Thus, it deprived the language of religion, as well as of art, an essential degree of reality. At the beginning, the separation proved most beneficial to both partners. Reality, freed from its commitment to the symbol, became more really real than before. The hand of man reaching out for this reality was no longer unsteadied by the awe and fear of the symbolic mystery. He acquired the surgeon's hygienic dexterity. And reality, pressed the mechanical way, yielded ample nourishment, real, if not divine. As reality became more real, so the symbol became more symbolic, and art more artistic. The artist ceased to be a humble craftsman, supplying goods for the common trade between heaven and earth. He set himself up as a dealer in very special specialities, with a heaven all to himself and an earth to look down upon. But there were also signs of uneasiness. They mounted to a climax of tension in the 17th century. What was first felt to be a liberation appeared more and more as a robbery. Robbed of its real significance, what did symbol signify? Robbed of its symbolic meaning, what did reality mean? Finally, for the truth of human comprehension resides the Goethe, and I will conclude by referring to Goethe's Faust. Writes in Goethe in that balanced vision in which the religious, the aesthetic, and the moral perceptions are at one. Only through their concord the world stands revealed as the proper home of man, appearing neither too great for his insignificance nor too small for his greatness, neither too fantastic for his reason nor too prosaic for his imagination, neither too unwieldy for his will nor too unlovable for his affection. In a very profound sense of that word, propriety is for Goethe the criterion of truth. So, here are my conclusions. I'm afraid the separation that Heller describes between religion and science cannot be reversed. One cannot in any way support or challenge the other. As things stand, they don't need each other at all. They are not inimical to each other. They are simply two different fields of discourse that serve completely different human needs. They both have their own logic of faith and doubt. In science, it's built into the very structure of this pursuit. In religion, I think it's best expressed and expounded through stories. Stories of faith and doubt. Thank you.
Now I invite you, both speakers here, up to the other one. Thank you. All right. Now I invite both of the speakers here up to the podium, Henry and Jean. So we start with, Jean, you can comment on Henry's presentation first, and then Henry comments on yours. And you can find connections between that. You have some 5 to 10 minutes if you like to start.
Well, thank you. Again, when you hear the topic, Stories of Faith and Doubt, the assumption is that it's about religion. But that was a brilliant point showing that faith and doubt also applies to science. Through much of the modernist age, which I think we're leaving behind, science claimed to present the only truth, the only criteria for truth, and nothing that did not fit scientific understanding of truth is not even admissible, and to the great harm of religion and philosophy and arts and many other things. That was a brilliant insight that science itself has to do with faith, and the science too has to be involved doubt. In fact, even the pursuit of science, you said that a scholar is a professional doubter. I think a scientist too has to be a professional doubter of science, of the existing models, to try to find new models and new evidence and try to account for it. Anyway, that was just very insightful, and I thank you for that. The difference of faith, I think some Christians too forget what faith is and confuse faith with knowledge. Certainly knowledge is important, but faith is the evidence of things not seen. And so there's a dimension of faith that is not the same at all of knowledge or certainty. Rather, it's an act of trust, an act of doing what one believes, even in the light of the uncertainty that it entails. So, there's a very helpful insight. I know the description is that Emeritus Forum sponsors debates. I don't really know what to debate about. I might be approaching from a different angle some things that are very much like what I'm approaching from my angle.
Yeah, this is working. Yeah, I mean, I found there were so many common points I tried to make when I was going through those films about the sort of about doubt and faith as a struggle. Particularly, of course, how it comes out in Dostoevsky. Karamazov Brothers is just a wonderful example about that. And of course, what's so great about Dostoevsky's art, that he's able to model all those different ways of how different people react. So it's not just about a single way of responding, but a whole gamut of how different people, different kinds of people with different kind of backgrounds respond to these questions. Les Miserables is perhaps a bit more sort of unified in that sense, that it's got this major message, but it's a wonderful scene in the church where the bishop actually then gives him all those candles and says, "Oh yes, you've got to take these with me." That's an enormously powerful scene. And then, of course, it's one of the questions that can books and films make us better people? I certainly hope that would be true. And the way Richard put it with this idea of modelling, it is a way of at least helping us to gain the possibility of understanding ourselves and our motivations better, and questioning that, are we up to that? That seeing the church in the Miserables, the bishop, that really made me wonder, could I be on that level? Could I forgive and then just say, okay, no, it's all right, you take the rest? So it really does put us in a sort of face extremely basic and extremely important questions of our humanity.
Yeah, the concept of modeling in science, a model is one that can account for the whole range of evidence in a certain way. Maybe the model that is a story works in the same way, one that can capture the complexity and the fullness of human experience without the different kind of reductionisms that are so common. And a great novel, a great film, I think tends to have that kind of complexity and that comprehensive quality, whereas propaganda, whether it's religious propaganda or political propaganda or whatever, lacks that. And so, just thinking in terms of a model, some models are inadequate. Some maybe approximate something that's, if not true, closer to the fullness of reality than others. But I think that can apply to literature as well as to science.
Because sometimes the model, we might come to the conclusion that very important aspects of human behavior or the things that condition our being here in the world are missing in that, although they should be there. So in that sense, it's very similar, it's very analogous to the problems they have in scientific modeling, and whether it actually captures everything or really relevant aspects of whatever we are discussing.
Yes. I was astonished as we were quoting Tertullian and Kierkegaard, to be quoted in that company. That disoriented me greatly. So, but that idea of vocation, I think, is a very powerful concept in describing how we're to live out our lives in the world, and to look at the gifts that we have and our inclinations in those terms to be used faithfully as part of our spiritual experience. It's very helpful.
Yeah, well, that's one idea I took from your wonderful article with George Herbert, and I'm not sure if I'm exploiting it in such my own way, but when I pointed out that both our tendency to have faith in something and to doubt it,
Yes.
are our gifts which have to be cultivated.
Right, and you see that in George Herbert, who's probably one of the most explicitly great Christian devotional poets, certainly in the English language. And yet, so many of his poems are about doubt. They're about his struggle, like the film you had as a pastor, his frustrations in his ministry, the lack of people are not responding to him. He's questioning the whole thing, and then suddenly there's a moment of grace that just breaks in on him, and he's reminded of his calling as a pastor, and yet much of his poetry, as you say, you could see his poems of doubt, as well as which turn into poems of faith.
And with the films I listed there, there's of course a big difference between Robert Bresson and Ingmar Bergman. Because like in this film, The Winter Light, Alvin Waller und Ahmed Yestena. It's interesting that different critics have responded very differently to the end of the film. After that, he goes to conduct the service, and the film ends when he says, O Lord God Almighty, all the creations for your might. And some people think that after this film we have to assume that that's completely vacuous, that it's just empty, sort of routine that he goes through. And yet others hear that, no, he's actually refound his faith. We can't tell. It's Bergman left us open. And in his personal notes, he thinks that he has left religion. He was a pastor's son, which is obviously a very important part of his own psychological makeup, and it reappears in his art. And even if he said that he forsook religion about this time, it still is always there. And still there's sort of a, perhaps it is still true. Bresson is very different in this respect. It's like I said that the diary of the county priest ends up with that. He kind of finalizes that, all is grace. And in one way or the other, it's all the time there, particularly in this so-called recent technology, 3 films, and very much in pickpocket, the article I described in this film. And we could watch that at the very end of that film, shall we? I've got it on a clip, but again, that's with Finnish subtitles. But let's see. I've also got a DVD with English subtitles. Oops. So, as the title suggests, it is a story of a pickpocket. And let's see, I might not. No, this is. And at the end of the film, he ends up in prison. And his first reaction is that he's been, pursuing this art of pickpocketing and sort of refused almost all connections with other people. And so he ends up in prison. And then a young woman with whom he has had an affair or some kind of relationship comes to meet her. And this is how the final scene moves along. Oh yes, I have to first, sorry, thanks. I have to go through this first.
Je sais que d'habitude, ceux qui ont fait ces choses se taisent. Ces murs, ces barreaux, ça m'est bien égal. Je les vois même pas. C'est l'idée.
Quelle idée?
J'aurais dû mes pieds, je me suis laissé prendre. Cette idée est insupportable.
Tu souffres.
J'ai tout avoué.
T'en seras plus compte.
Et à l'instruction, je n'irai. Ils ont rendu fier tort. Pourquoi être venu?
Et puis toi,
Je te dis ce que j'ai mal agi, Cyprien. Je le perds, ça vaut rien. Reste. Il y avait autre chose que je ne lui avais pas dit. Pourquoi vivre? Je n'avais rien décidé encore. Jeanne n'en revint pas. À la lecture de cette lettre, mon cœur a battu violemment. Quelque chose illumina sa figure. Oh Jeanne, pour aller jusqu'à toi, quel drôle de chemin il m'a fallu prendre.
I've seen this many times, and it still makes me, I'm still eyes wet again. It is so touching. And just as much as in the Diary of a County Priest, it is a natural grace, of course, that he's gone into the very top. Pourquoi vivre? Why live? And he thinks even that lost his last contact with life, and then he comes back, and there's an almost like magical or religious transformation, where suddenly there is a kind of glimmer of hope. A lot of it, of course, is an aesthetic effect that Bresson creates by using extremely controlled means, very restrained acting, and then that music bursts out, and again, as Paul Schrader has pointed out, it is then for the spectator to adjust whether to accept that idea that change can take place and what is its significance. Do you want to come back here?
You're right, and of course it's with him, the pickpocket, but why does she still love him? He mistreats her, he pushes her away, all of this time she keeps coming back, and she loves him despite the way he is. And that's grace, and that's the theological meaning of grace also. that unmerited favor that suddenly breaks in upon a sinful human being. So it's a beautiful film, and I thank you for introducing me to it.
Of course, that all through the film, this is what Paul Schrader refers to that every day, which appears sort of cold and meaningless and grey, and then there's that scene of disparity, sense of the complete loss, and then that final turn, that there is still love and meaning.
Yes, and again, he's broken by the law. He's finally caught for all of his crime. He's suffering, he's put in prison, and everything is at the lowest point. And then, again, right, it's all gray, but the light comes in. He sees the light in her face, and he's transformed by that.
Yes. It's such a beautiful scene that something illuminated her face. What a long way it had to go. Okay.
So, are there any questions you might want to pose to our... Yes?
Thank you. Are there any questions you want to pose to our presenters, or any comments you want to make? Floor is yours. Yeah.
Should I take
You can...
Thank you for both of you. Interesting topic and presentations and discussion especially. Two movies came to my mind, perhaps lacking from the list of years. Ida, 2013 by Mikael Elmolhoda, the Polish director, and the recent one, Silence, by Martin Scorsese. Have you seen those movies? Could you elaborate on them or comment them?
Which was the second one?
Sorry?
Which was the last one you mentioned?
Silence.
By
The Japanese, about the Christians in Japan and the martyrdom. I'm sorry.
Will you start on that?
Well, I haven't seen Silence. It's on my Netflix list. The Silence is about the Jesuit missionaries in Japan and the persecutions and martyrdom, which comes to a point of a person deciding to tread on a crucifix in order to save the other Christians. So it's sort of an act of seeming rejection, having to apostatize, almost as an act of faith. And so it's a very complex kind of a very powerful religious film by Martin Scorsese, The Last Temptation of Christ, and of course, and others. So I haven't seen that, so I can't comment on it. I know people who have seen it tend to come back very, very overwhelmed by it, because it's something very unexpected happens in the course of that film, and it shows the circle of doubt and faith, where the person, the priest, doubts what good he's doing as a missionary, because it's just bringing so many people that he loves to their death and to martyrdom. And yet that itself is a testimony of faith. And the way Christ is brought in, some of the missionaries are crucified and are sharing that death and the symbolism of bearing the cross, and Christ's cross and their cross coming together is a very powerful image.
And Ida, of course, is a great film. Those who haven't seen it, it's about a nun who discovers that she's actually of Jewish ancestry. At the end of the war, where Jews have been annihilated, where she's been just a baby. She had been given to a Catholic family, and then she's become a nun. And just before she takes a vow, then the Mother Superior asks her to go and meet her aunt to learn about what has really happened to her family and what her background truly is. there's this sort of striking scene where he finally discovers where his family has been buried. There's he gets this one man who's actually been part of that crime to open the grave, and then just standing there by the grave, she suddenly asks, well, why am I not there? Why didn't you kill me too? And so that's again one point where a person is put into the absolute sort of 0 point of existence, where I could have been dead as well as all those other people, and for some reason I live. And now, from all this confusion and all this disparity of what I discovered about my background, I had to restore my life. But in the film, which I did mention there, The Innocents is another Polish film where it also features nuns. Of course, it's said that these nuns have been raped during the war, and some of them are pregnant. And for the Mother Superior in this film, it's such a shame that she actually takes one baby that has been born outside and let it die. And then, when this is discovered, she goes away, and her last words are sort of kind of at the same time accepting her horrible guilt and giving a kind of an excuse, is saying, I will go to hell because I tried to make things better for you. So it's a kind of a similar horrible.
Right.
I heard in your question a interesting aspect of the sacrifice in film, which touches your colleagues, and I think in Scorsese's previous movie, The Last Temptation of Christ, it's the way of sacrifice that Christ took. So there is a relation. What does sacrifice stand for? You know, whether it touches us or it is just futile. And I think it's a big question. So thank you for that. Are there any other questions you would like to pose or comments you would like to make?
Thank you both for the presentation. It's very interesting. I have a question. Professor mentioned that science does not need a notion of truth. And I just read one book about Thomas Nagel that you quoted, Mind and Cosmos, and he makes a quite interesting critique about philosophical naturalism, which is one notion of truth that scientists usually relies on. And it seems to me that science hinges on assumptions of logic, mathematics, and multiple notions of truth. And I would like you to expand a little bit on this subject. And for both presenters, I would like to ask, because you were discussing about faith and doubt as if they were apparently opposed to each other in some sense. And I would like to ask, what is your view? What constitutes knowledge? And therefore, doubt and faith, where they go within the context of knowledge?
To start.
Shall I start with that? Yeah, that's a very good question. And as Ernst Nagel in his Structure of Science points out, this is a one so-called instrumentalist view of science that it only produces kind of models. And that the question is how functional that model is. Does it explain experimental observations, and does it help us into creating a more coherent theory, and so on. But Nagel also points out that that is only one rather extreme view, and of course in certain situations we begin to believe that certain things actually are like that. Taking one example, when Galileo first focused on Jupiter with his telescope, newly built, he noticed there's a peculiar formation around Jupiter. And a few nights later, he looks again, and to his astonishment, notices the pattern has changed. And then again it has changed. And he makes a hypothesis. Well, what about if there's something orbiting Jupiter? And of course, then the whole cosmology begins to change. So at first, it's just a hypothesis to explain that experimental observation. And of course, there comes a point where that is accepted as a fact of how celestial orbits actually organize and becomes a part of a bigger picture, quite literally. So, there is a fine balance, but like then mathematical formulas. In particle physics, they got this, it's really all about mathematical equations. And apparently even the best of people doing this, they have only a very abstract view of what that actually means and in what way does it really reflect the reality of the particle physics. And one thing is that we have to use analogies of our real life. And so we have this idea that an atom has a center consisting of protons and neutrons, and there's electrons going around it. But in some sense, that's actually a model based on what we know about celestial orbits. And as one physicist once pointed out to me, the idea of an electron circuiting that center is just a question that there's certain kind of a probability function that the electron may be found in a certain place and have a certain energy status. So, in that sense, even physics is in the state that it's just making models, and these models should not be taken as, in too literal sense, as being descriptions of what the world is actually like. There's always that kind of a difference between what we are able to say about the real world and what it is, in a way, in as much as that is philosophically meaningful. But then you said we are posing faith and doubt. I think in one way sense, I think we both were kind of saying that these are sort of almost like complementary aspects of what it is to try to relate to spiritual issues. Would you agree with that?
I would, and again, the idea of modeling. When you study the history of science, you'll see a series of different models to explain whether it's the heavens or molecular existence or atoms or biology. And each of the models at the time is logical and consistent and supportive of evidence. What happens though, as instruments become more refined and get more evidence, including some that does not fit the model, and so you have to make a bigger model or a different model. But at every level, they're still using logic and evidence and the scientific method. But it isn't that those are wrong or insufficient, but it's just what is the kind of knowledge that is being constructed to account for what we see. Yes, as far as faith and doubt, they're really very closely related. Part of it is living and acting when one's knowledge is not complete. What do you do? How do you do that? And partly you see in faith, scientists use faith. They have faith in that model that they can account for what they need, or that they can refine the model and get a better model. In religion, faith is again defined in the Bible as the evidence of things not seen. We walk by faith and not by sight. We have to walk, we have to go forward. Again, trusting in Christ, and who will not fully have the knowledge until the end of time or after death. But in the meantime, it's acting in a mode of trust. And of course, there's always the issue of the object of one's faith. Luther said that, and he's talking about the existence of God, and he said, well, what does it mean to have a God? He said, well, what do you put your faith in? Okay, that's your God. And there are a wide range of things that people can put their faith in, and that we have to put our faith in everyday life. But the relationship with faith is not the same as absolute certainty. In fact, certainty can kind of crowd out the need for faith, and so doubt is almost an important part of the life of faith.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, I have one. Something that bothers me all the time. Not all the time, but sometimes. At this point of discussion, if you think of the, this is more like speculation from the science point of view, and more like sort of preposterous question from religious point of view. Sort of, if you think of the utmost reference of the truth, if you go with the scientific reasoning to its limits. So where would be your best guess or your best idea to put the utmost reference to the truth? Is it in human mind, as the cognition scientists say, or is it out there, as Christian tradition says? Where is God? Is it God in humans? A sort of, whether it's, the New Age kind of understanding, or God is something opposite, still talking to us as something separate from us who make the decisions, or is God out there?
Well, the New Testament talks about how Christ fills all things. And so I would say God fills all things. He is out there, including in the manifests himself through physical means, and in the physical world, and in the scientific world. He is inside us. He fills everything. And so I think it's important that we keep that understanding of of an out there. I know some postmodernists believe that everything is just a human construction, but there are limits of what we can construct and what we make. And the outside world has a way of breaking in on us. For example, people who believe that everything is a construction, when they get cancer. Is that something that I constructed, that I created for myself? Is that a reality? And that subjective view, I think, is just a way to sort of evade reality. Now, can we fully know reality? Can we fully know God? Well, no, because God is far beyond us. Just like nature is far beyond us. And so our minds can do what they can and make progress, and we get to know nature, we get to know God in the course of our lives and our experience. But I think faith has to have an object. It has to be a faith in something, and whether that's a scientist's faith in that there are natural laws in the universe that it can come to grips with and discover, or whether it's a person's faith in Christ on the cross, that fact makes a difference in my life. I think it's important to keep hold of that.
Thank you. That gives very interesting ideas to think about. So he's out there, but he is beyond in being out there. So he's not just, sort of artifact within our view. So Henry.
I just conclude by going back to Goethe, and another scholar writing about him, T.J. Reid. I just go through that German. He's writing about the symbolism and how symbolism worked as a kind of a sort of an almost like a sudden understanding of the thing that we cannot really grasp, that is almost beyond that. Something, of course, which is also in Bresson's Pickpocket, that he's talking about something that cannot be directly described. And then he writes about how Faust achieves his author's Goethe's poetic relation to experience and thereby rises above Mephisto's grasp, because he has learned to live symbolically. And then I quote from the middle there, "This is to see all experience as relative and not as valueless. No single moment can achieve the absolute, but each has a symbolic potential, and their value taken together lies in the sequence they compose, the larger pattern of nature into which they flow, and the participation of these larger patterns that they allow men." That we can, something, the nature and God is beyond us, but it is something in which we can participate. And like art is one way in which that can, almost like in a sort of sudden revelation, be at least momentarily experienced.